Give me chocolate. Sure, always good.
We'll get more cups.
This will share. I know. I think they can have a coffee all day.
Sorry.
I love it. That's the matter.
Good evening, everybody. I'm running a bit late.
Nightmare. Sorry, there girls. Hi, Ben.
You come here, you get cooked. Now it looks like you gave him chocolates.
What?
I'm playing that fake shit.
You heard of the other thing,
No.
What's your
Good evening.
These people with the 9:30
I'm only having our showers. I suffer so much because I need to have showers. I
shouldn't indulge so much that it affects you.
It's a nightmare.
Well, up to good evening, everybody. I hope it's okay. What? Harvey's on, Ben, Andrew, and Yehuda Steinberg. We're not recording. It's not being recorded on the
picture's very unclear.
It's very unclear. Can you hear me?
Very unclear.
There's a lot of background noise. Everybody's not settled yet. Take the chocolate and put it somewhere more accessible. Shai, do you mind? Oh, and also close the door.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, put this chocolate.
No. Put it next to Lady. Sorry. No, you're in the middle, ladies. So. Okay. Can you hear me better now, Harvey? Not much. Now better. Ben, can you hear me?
It says your bandwidth is low.
It's not. It's not.
I'm retired. That's the person whose computer comes up on.
Oh.
No, could say no.
It says your band.
Yeah, you're not on. I am on. What are you doing? Maishi? Can you hear me now?
Now it's good. I'll find the charger now.
There is a charger. You've got charger in your hand.
I can hear you, but it's very incoherent and there's no picture.
There's no?
The picture's not very good.
I'll come and protect him. Bring him here.
Sorry, Zoffy.
Ben, can you hear?
Ben, how are you? What about you, Ben?
No, it's also very jittery and not clear.
Moshe, I think you're not going to gain there. It's going to...
No.
Try and speak slowly and loud. Well, I try and speak slowly and as loud as possible. Oh, it wasn't on. The battery wasn't on. Now can you hear me better, Harvey? Now it should be better, no?
Not yet.
Come here.
Okay, I'll try and speak slowly and loud. Avoid. Okay. We're starting a new perek, B'ezras Hashem Yisborach. Shabbos, Daf Kuf Mem Gimel Amud Beis, the top of the page. Shabbos. This perek, like last, is a collection of many different halachas and food preparations, and many of them are very relevant. Let's see how much we can learn from it. Mishnah starts off, Shabbos shenishbero, a barrel of wine or oil that broke, and now the liquid is spilling all over the floor. You're allowed to save 3 meals. You can tell other people, save for yourself also, Rashi says, only 3 meals. We're not allowed to soak it up. Now, what is wrong with saving more than 3 meals? It says, big machlekes in Rishonim, what's the chashash? Either if we allow you to save as much as you want, you'll get so involved, you'll end up fixing the barrel. And fixing the barrel is tikkun mono. Alternatively, you'll get so involved that you'll carry more cups and bowls to save. So Chazal limited the amount that you're allowed to save, and they said you're allowed to save only 3 meals. The Meiri adds that 3 meals is only permitted if it's Friday night before your Friday night meal. If the barrel breaks during midday and you've had already 2 meals, you can only save 1 meal's worth. That means you have to work out how much wine and oil are you going to be drinking in the next meal. There are those who are maximum to make Kiddush and Shalosh Shudas. Those who don't make Kiddush and Shalosh Shudas, any of you do Kiddush and Shalosh Shudas? But Salah, do you do Kiddush and Shalosh Shudas? In Holland they do. No, I thought it was Yakish. Yakish. None of you do it? You don't do Kiddush and Shalosh Shudas? My grandmother does. Very macrid about it. Okay.
What's the reason for it?
The Rambam writes, like all other meals. Okay, so if you're not going to do Kiddush, you can't save if your barrel breaks, Chas v'sholem. Then it's only allowed for the amount you're going to save for the next meal. Okay, Rashi points out that if you have one very big bowl, you can save much more than 3 meals, like we had the previous Gemara. That a big bowl, can you hear, is any good now or is it very, very bad? Then it's okay. Okay-ish. Rashi points out that if you've got one very big bowl, you're allowed to save even more than 3 meals. It's only if you're bringing many bowls. So again, just summarize briefly. A barrel breaks. So then, if you've got one big bowl, you can save as much as you can in one bowl. You haven't got one bowl, you can only save 3 meals worth. You can only save 3 meals if you haven't had any of the meals yet. If you've had some meals you can't save, you can only save to the amount of meals that you have left. And you can tell other people to save for themselves, again, only according to the number of meals they have left at the end of Shabbos. But you're not allowed to soak it up. Why? Because you might come to then squeeze it out, and that's forbidden. Next part of this is like a whole new topic. You're not allowed to squeeze a fruit on Shabbos to take out of a liquid. If they come out from themselves, it is forbidden. So you're not allowed to squeeze a grape on Shabbos. And it's a Issa Deiraisa to squeeze a grape on Shabbos. Which Issa is it? Dosh. The Issa of Dosh. The Mishavur points out that when you take peas out of a pod, which is an edible pod, there's no Issa of Dosh. Because you're just taking food from food. It's like cutting a potato in half. There's no Issa of cutting a potato in half, taking potato from potato. So when you squeeze a grape, so when you squeeze, let's say, milk out of an udder, that's dosh, because the udder can't be eaten and the milk can. But why is there dosh when you squeeze juice out of grapes and out comes juice? What would you answer? Mishwa?
2 different things.
Oh, Mishwa says 2 different things. One is a liquid and one is a food. And therefore, that is considered, when you take peas from a pod, you can eat the pod, you can eat the peas, it's like cutting a potato in half, there's no problem. But when you squeeze a grape, out of the grape comes juice, and the grape itself is a food. So you're taking liquid out of food. That's 2 separate things. That's considered dosh. So you're not allowed to squeeze grapes on Shabbos. Are you allowed to cut an orange on Shabbos, even though there'll be juice at the bottom? Yes, because that's not an act of squeezing, it's an act of cutting. Why not? No, you're allowed to cut grapes. But if juice comes out, it is forbidden. So here we have, why is it forbidden if juice comes out? That means if you've got grapes and the bottom of the bowl of grapes is juice, it is forbidden midrabanan, not min haTorah. The reason is, if we allow you to drink the juice out of the grapes, the bottom of the bowl, you'll get so pleasure, you'll come to squeeze the grapes next time. Oh, that's big shayla. More discussed. This is the Gemara on this page, right? So again, you're not allowed to squeeze because it's dosh. You're taking liquid out of food. So let's say you are squeezing something which is not liquid out of food. Let's say you've got a carrot, and you squeeze a carrot, and out comes carrot, not juice, carrot, or squeeze. What was a good thing to squeeze? And it's not coming out juice, just another fruit. That would be no problem of dosh at all. It's only when you're squeezing juice out of a fruit that is a problem. And if the liquid comes out, it is forbidden midrabanan, in case you might come to it again. We have Yehuda, he says a difference. If this fruit was set aside for food, mutter, because you didn't want to squeeze them. So Chazal had no reason to make a gzeh. You're not going to squeeze them. You set it aside to eat the grapes. If you set it aside to have liquids, that means you wanted to have juice. Hayotzmen also that which comes out is also. So that is the halacha of squeeze. Now we have a third topic in the Mishnah. Chalus dvash. Loaves of honey. In the honeycomb, you get like these wax loaves, which have got honey inside them. And getting the honey out of it, I mean, squeezing the honey is awesome. But these, Shaviskon Erev Shabbos, you already crushed them on Friday. Since you crushed them on Friday, so therefore now, the honey just oozes out on its own. V'yotzu me'atzmon, asurim, they're forbidden. Why? Because we're scared that you might come to crush more. Rabbi Lezer matir, Rabbi Lezer permits. Why? Rabbi Lezer agrees you're not allowed to crush, but he believes that once it's already crushed, he says that once it's already crushed on Friday, you're not going to go and squeeze it on Shabbos. Once it's crushed, the honey comes out by itself. You're not going to start squeezing it. So that is the halacha of honeycombs. Says the Gemara. Tana, we have a brayso the yispog b'yayin. You not soak up wine and put it back in the bowl. If you've got oil, so what you do is you put your hand in the oil, and then you wipe the hand on the bowl, on the cup, and that's how you get the oil back into the bowl. That is forbidden. This is an interesting uvda dechol. And Iri points out it's an uvda dechol. Usually, uvda dechol is something which is likely to come to an issa deraisa. Right? We don't need to do something which are likely to come to an issa deraisa. It says this has nothing to do with issa deraisa. There's no chashash issa deraisa. It is simply a very mundane act. And Chazal did not want you to lose the memory that it's Kedusha Shabbos. So if you go Shabbos afternoon and you see oil all over the floor, so you dip your hand in the oil and wipe it on the bowl, and dip your hand in the, and that's how you get the oil back into the bowl. It's uvda dechol. It's something which is forbidden simply because it takes away from the memory of Kedusha Shabbos. Tanu Rabbanon, nispazu le'peirus b'chotza. If fruit scatter in the chotza, melaket al yad v'oichel, you can gather bit by bit and eat it. But not into a basket or into a box. That you mustn't do it as you do in a weekday. So over here, the second taste on the page is bothered, and it's a big difficulty. Is the Vice says you can do a bit by bit, but not a very lot. But when it says you can do bit by bit, it says v'oichel and eat it. Normally that means you do a bit by bit and eat it straight away, which could be to understand you're only allowed to gather as much as you're going to eat immediately, which would limit you much, much further. So as Tesis, you have to miss out the word v'oichel. Because if it would be true that you're not allowed to take the amount that you're going to be eating, then the Brisa does not need to finish off that you're not allowed to take it in a box or a basket. Even less than that, you're not allowed to. As much as you're not going to eat, you're not allowed to. Rather, you have to miss out the word. It means like this. You're allowed to do bit by bit, but not a lot. Now, over here, it's uvda dechol. But over here, it's uvda dechol, which actually is a chashash issa deraisa. And we're showing over here two mahalchim what issa deraisa could be involved in gathering apples that scattered across your garden. What's issa deraisa going to be? Ma'amah, gathering, ma'amah, or boira, because usually when the apples fall on the floor, they get dirty and you want to separate them from the bits and pieces, etc. But either way, this is uvda dechol, which they forbade, even though it's not ma'amah and it's not boira, because we're talking about what you're not planning to do either, it's still forbidden because it's a chashash of uvda dechol. It says we're about ein seichtin saperis. Now, you look up in Mishnah Berurah straight away, it tells you there are three kinds of fruits. One is grapes and olives. One is strawberries and pomegranates. And one is all other fruit. And the Mishnah Berurah tells us grapes and olives, you're not allowed to squeeze min haTorah. Strawberries and pomegranates, you're not allowed to squeeze midrabanan. And all other fruit, you're allowed to squeeze. And this is actually a summary of the next Gemara, which goes on and on. Because really, the Gemara brings many different shittas, but that's the summary. So again, grapes and olives is forbidden in haTorah. Other fruit which you sometimes squeeze is also midrabanan, and fruit which you never squeeze is mutter. Now, it changes according to society. Well, Shabbos brings down that nowadays he does not know of a fruit that is not squeezed. Meaning there would be no fruit which would be mutter. Do you know of a fruit that's not squeezed? there's cucumber juice, carrot juice. I've been to a shop selling carrot juice. And therefore, there is no fruit that is mutter. Anybody want to argue the Shabbos? Anybody fancy arguing? Is any fruit or vegetable that you know that nobody squeezes? Okay. That is one thing he says. Potatoes. Interesting. Potato juice. I haven't seen. What? Radish. Okay, I hear.
There's a vegetable.
No, but he's also, okay, I hear. Another thing he says, and this is a big shaila, which gets very, very busy with. I'm not going to spend a long time, but we're actually a bit ahead, so we can spend a couple of minutes discussing. We just said that olives are deraisa and other fruit is derabanan. We can explain this in two separate ways. One way is because olives and wine is made for juice, while strawberries you sometimes squeeze, sometimes you don't. Pomegranates sometimes squeeze, sometimes don't. Therefore, since they are made for squeezing, that means the majority of the fruit is made for squeezing, it is considered properly dosh. While the other ones is not mamish dosh. That is one way of understanding. And therefore, oranges today, which the vast majority of oranges are used for squeezing, would, according to that logic, fall into the category of olives and grapes, because of midiraisa. Because at the end of the day, that is what they are for. They're actually mostly used for squeezing.
And you could go make something go from a
if the reason why olives and grapes is because that is what it's meant for, so it's deraisa. What difference does it make? Or you could say, no, the reason why olives and grapes is deraisa is because the juice that comes out of olives and grapes is different from all other juice. We had this a little bit in brachas regarding the bracha you make on olive juice versus other fruit. The other fruit, the juice that comes out of it is considered like a sweat. It's considered like it's not really it's not really a new liquid which has been created. But olive oil and wine has got a whole chashivus. And if that's the case, orange juice is going to be do a bot. And it makes a big nafkemina regarding, for example, if the juice is oozed out by itself, and other nafkeminas which were machmir by grapes and olives, would you be machmir by oranges as well? This is what Shabbos got big arichus, and it brings the machlokes from Shemazaman and Riyashiv regarding this din as whether oranges is the deraisa or the rabban. That's a shayla. Now we're going to go through the nitty-gritty, so to speak, of the Gemara. Mishnah is ein sicht in Saperes. Omar Yehuda Mar Shmuel. Again, in our Mishnah, about the machlokes, whether Tanakama says it's always forbidden. And the Yehuda says it depends what you're using it for. Do you use it for storing it for food, or are you storing it for juice? Omar Yehuda Mar Shmuel. Oh, he agrees. When it comes to olives and grapes, even if you're storing it for food, it is awesome. My time. His mind is always for squeezing. Even if you take grapes home and you've got no intention of squeezing it, since most of them are made for squeezing, it's considered as if you want to squeeze them. But Ola argues, he argues also by grapes and olives. He agrees that they argue in both cases. But he says, when the Buddha is correct, when it comes to other fruit, but not by olives and grapes. And by olives and grapes, therefore, whatever the reason you've got them in the house, the juice that oozes out of them is forbidden. With other fruits, we pass like a Buddha, it depends why. And that's actually how we pass them. So again, if you've got grapes in the house, we don't care why you have the grapes in the house, whether you intend to eat them, whether you intend to juice them. Either way, liquid that oozes out of them is forbidden with Rabbanan. But all other fruits, with the exception perhaps of oranges and others which are made for squeezing, all other fruit, it depends why you've got them in the house. If you've got oranges in the house, not oranges, let's say you've got strawberries and pomegranates in the house because you intend to eat them, and you've come Shabbos afternoon, you see there's a whole load of juice in the bowl, then you're allowed to drink them. No. If you've got them in the house because you plan to make juice out of them, and then there's juice in the bowl, you're not allowed to drink them. He agrees then with olives and grapes that it's forbidden. That it is permitted. If he agrees to him by olives and grapes, and he agrees to him when it comes to other fruits, when do they ever argue? Go and look. It's your job to work it out. They argue about strawberries and pomegranates. I translate tutim as strawberries. There are many who don't. They translate it as berries or other translations. It's not clear what's the exact translation. What did this article translate as? Yeah, no, it's so tutim was strawberries. Mulberry is translated. What is a mulberry? Different kind of berry. Similar. Okay. Raspberry. So that's the in-between stage. When it comes to olives and grapes, everything is forbidden. Comes to other fruit, meaning like we'll see prunes and things, and plums, every degree is permitted. Comes to strawberries, that's the in-between one. Says the Gemara, the Tanya, we have a price. Zeisim shemoshach v'hen shemen, olives that oil flowed out of them, and olives shemoshach v'hen yain, v'chnisam, bein loichel, bein mashkin, whether you took them into storage for eating, whether you took it in for storage, for drinking, ayotzim and osa, whatever comes out is forbidden. Tutim shemoshach v'hen mayim, v'men shemoshach v'hen yain, strawberries are out, comes a liquid, and pomegranate juice is called wine. V'chnisam loichel, ayotzim and muta, lemashkin v'lestam, for liquid or with no intention, ayotzim osa, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This price is explaining Shittas Rabbi Yehuda, which we had in our Mishnah, but it's adding two things which in our Mishnah does not say. One is that in the price is adding that if you have no intention, that means if you have no intention, you never ask somebody buys pomegranates. Sometimes he buys them to squeeze, sometimes he buys them to eat, and this time he bought them without deciding, without even thinking why he bought them. So you have to be machmir. That is one thing this Brisa adds, which the Mishnah doesn't mention. And in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda didn't say which fruit he was talking about. In this Brisa, he explains, I'm only talking about strawberries, I'm not talking, and pomegranates, I am not talking about olives and grapes, because there I hold it's always us. Either way, it is forbidden, because we're chayshish that you will come to squeeze afterwards. That when a person has juice without any intention, it is forbidden because we consider it happy, that he's happy that the juice came out. That means according to Rabbi Yehuda, you buy some pomegranates and out, you never thought why. You never thought, you had no intention. And then what happened was, come Shabbos afternoon and you see there's juice in the bowl. It is forbidden to drink it. Why? Because we say, oh, you must be happy, and since you're happy, you may come to squeeze it. Well, it's not. Here the Gemara does, it's quite difficult, is that the Gemara compares things which to our mind might not seem so similar. The Mishnah is talking about the halacha of machshirin. Machshirin, we've had this many times, that for something to become tomei, it has to have had liquid fall on it. So if you've got an apple that never had liquid fall on it, even if a dead person was to touch it, the apple will remain a torah. It has to have once got wet. There are 7 liquids, yad shochadam, the Rosh of the 7 liquids that there are. Yain, Dvash, Shemen, Cholov, Tal, then Dalet is Dam, and Mem is Mayim. So you've got the 7 liquids which are Isivka. Now there are 2 halachas. One is that the liquid has to fall on the fruit, levotz. That means if liquid falls on the fruit, but you never wanted it, then the halacha is it's not considered mukhshar lekabel tumah. So let's say you've got apples and you never want them to get wet, and they got wet, it's not mukhshar lekabel tumah. You have to want them to have got wet. This Gemara, Tesis actually, the second to bottom Tesis tells us that this Gemara is not to do with that. That's a different question. That's got to do with, did you want it to get wet or did you not want it to get wet? Here we're discussing something else. And that is, in order for it to be considered a liquid, it has to have come berotzen. It means it's 2 separate things. It sounds the same, it's not the same. Let's say a cow has milk, and the milk, we said, is a liquid, but it got squeezed out shalei lerotzen, and you didn't want the cow to have it squeezed out. It's a loss. Every time the cow oozes milk, it's a loss. You could have sold it in the market, and now it's oozing milk. The milk that came out when you did not want it to come out, is that considered liquid or not? We're not discussing the fruit. Did it get wet lerotzen or not? That everybody agrees it has to be lerotzen, and if it's not lerotzen, if you did not want it to get wet, it's not mekabel tumah. We're discussing, does it become a liquid if it did not come out lerotzen? That means if a cow is oozing milk and you didn't want it to ooze milk, then the halacha is that it's a machlokas as to whether, so this is the question, is it considered a liquid or not? So it says like this, what's that? We're talking about a woman that has milk to nurse a baby. Metame, it's metame lerotzen shlei lerotzen. Whether she wanted it to come out, whether she did not want it to come out, let's say it came out by itself, it's either way, it's considered a liquid. There's a very difficult aspect over here. Only before I should discuss this, get to not know for a long time. How do we know that the liquid from a woman is at all considered liquid. Everything you have to have a right. We will see, not everything is a liquid. Blood from an animal, if you beat a cow, you slash its chest or something, and out oozes blood, that's not considered liquid. That's not liquid. Something to be considered liquid, there has to be a right that it is liquid. Oh, dam of a human being, or shchita dam, but not the blood of a wound of an animal. We'll see it maybe later why. But so now, how do we know the liquid of a woman that she nurses the baby? How do we know it's a liquid? And the Gemara tells us, Rashi brings it over here, that when Sisera was running away from Barak ben Avinoam, so she ran to the wife of Cheva Akeni, who was called Yoel, and she gave him milk. And the Pasuk says, Vatashkeyu, she gave him to drink. Vatashkeyu is the word mashke, liquid. And they all asked the question, the simple explanation is, which milk did she give him? Animal milk. And the question is, how can Rashi use this as a proof that human milk is a liquid? She opened the jug of milk, and she gave him to drink. In fact, the Vilna Gaon says from here is a raya that she didn't. She gave him to drink from her own milk in order to seduce him, in order to then weaken him, in order then to be able to kill him. But it's a problem over here. How can you bring a raya from over here at all that it's bichlal a liquid? It's not straightforward. There isn't an easy answer. Because pashtus, it means... Anyway, so human milk is a liquid. That everybody agrees. The only question is, did it come out berotzen or not berotzen? And the Tanakama holds, either way, it is considered a liquid. B'chala behema, the milk of an animal, it's only metame if it came out lerotzen. If you look at that second bottom thesis. Let's just read it very quickly. They were discussing when the fruit became wet, did you want it to become wet or not? Here we're not discussing that at all, says Tesis. Here we're discussing when the liquid left the woman or the animal, did they come barotzen or not? That's a separate topic. So again, the Tanakama holds the milk that comes from the woman is only in metame whether she wants it to come out or not. But the animal only if she wants it. Omar Akiva argues. Milk of woman is made for children. Metame levatzim v'shtei levatzim. You agree, Tanakama. It's always metame. Chalava behema shmiyuchad beinik tanim beinik doidim. Which you see, it's a much more user-friendly milk. Einu din shetame bein levatzim bein shtei levatzim. The chayes metame always. If human milk, which is used much less than animal milk, and it's metame bein levatzim bein shtei levatzim kavachema animal milk. So why do you say that's only metame when it says levatzim? Omuloi. So the Chachamim argue with it, and they say like this. If a woman gets bleeding, let's say a woman cuts herself, and the blood oozes out of her hand without her wanting it. She didn't want the blood to come out. The halacha is that blood is liquid, and if an apple would then fall in it, lerotzen, because that's the second stage where the apple falls into lerotzen, then the apple will be mukhshel lekabel tumah. Why? Because it came out, the blood came out. We actually learn it from all places, from Bina Marash of Adam Chalolim Yishte, that Klal Yisrael would drink the blood of those who were slain. The blood of people you kill is including those you beat. And Chazal talk about, the Pasuk talks about it, drinking the blood is metaphorical. That Klal Yisrael would destroy the enemies. But we learn from there that all blood is considered liquid. So therefore, the blood of a woman that oozes out, whether she wants it or not, is considered a liquid. And Rashi adds that milk, where does milk come from? Where does milk of a woman come from? The Gemara says, Dam nekav nasachalo, that the blood of the woman changes and becomes into milk. So therefore, they say to me, can't compare. The milk of a woman, where does it come from? From the blood of the woman. And the blood of the woman is metame, whether you want it or you don't want it, whether she wants to cut herself or she doesn't want to cut herself, metame. Yitzmo, will you compare that to chalava behavior, to the milk of an animal, top of mem daled amudalef? Shalei levatzon. Would you say that the milk of an animal should the wound of an animal is toy? It's not mekabel tumah. Why? Because chadam chalolim yishte is referring to human beings. Masha'in came by animals. It's only metame when you shecht it, because the pasuk says al ha'oretz tishbachenu kamoy. That when you shecht an animal, you should spill his blood, the animal's blood, like water, and that's talking about shechita blood, but not wound blood. So therefore, We have a machlokas, the milk coming out of an animal, when you have no intention for it to come out, and you don't want it to come out. Is it machshir lekabel tumah or not? Rabbi Akiva says if human milk does, animal milk does. After all, animal milk is much more user-friendly. I want to say to him, no, you can't compare. Human milk comes from human blood, and human blood is machshir whether you like it or not. Animal milk comes from animal blood, and animal blood is not machshir, so therefore it's not machshir lekabel tumah. Omar lo hen. So the Chachamim said back to Rabbi Akiva, you're wrong. Mach me'ani becholov mi bedam. I'm going to be more machli about the milk of an animal than the blood of an animal. Why? The person sees his animal is in distress, so he milks it to make the animal feel better. Tommy, then it is metami, because at the end of the day, the person wanted to milk the animal. It is true he didn't want the milk, but he wanted the milking process. That make is for if a person does bloodletting to his animal, nowadays that was a very common medication even for animals. So, as we said, the blood of an animal is stored. So you can't compare the milk of an animal to the blood of an animal. And therefore, he said that the milk of an animal is always machshir lekabel tumah. Amulos, they said to him, no, we don't agree with you. Salei zeisim ha'novim yechichu. Baskets of olives and grapes prove it. What? If liquid comes out of it when you want it to make, if it comes out without desire at all. The Mishnah there actually continues back and forth regarding this question. The Gemara actually stops halfway through a Mishnah. But the Mishnah there is discussing, what's the Mishnah discussing? The milk of an animal that came out without desire, if it's machshir lekabel tumah. The last argument, which is the reason we brought this entire Mishnah, is that if you've got baskets of grapes and they're oozing grape juice, the halacha is whether that if you want the juice, then they're machshir lekabel tumah. If not, they're not machshir lekabel tumah. Now the Gemara says like this: My love levotzen. Normally, what does the word levotzen mean? That you say, I want it. Oh, I'm delighted that the grapes are oozing juice. Shelo levotzen, not wanting, means bestoma, where you said no opinion whatsoever. Everybody wants to squeeze them. That is the purpose of grapes and olives. And but when a person doesn't want it, that means he's not said, I want it. It's considered not a juice. Let's go through the whole proof. We said previously, if you've got a bowl of pomegranates, and when you bought the pomegranates, you made no decision as to why you bought them. Either maybe for eating, maybe for drinking. You not made the decision. And out comes juice. Says Rabbi Yehuda that juice is considered levotzen, and you're not allowed to drink it, because if you drink it, you may come to squeeze a pomegranate on Shabbos. No. So there are 3 stages. Pomegranates was the middle stage, where people sometimes did, sometimes didn't. We'll see plums were things they never squeezed. Olives and grapes were things they always did squeeze. Again, pomegranates is sometimes squeezed, sometimes not. You come home Shabbos afternoon and you see you've got a bowl of pomegranates, and you don't know why you bought pomegranates, not sure if you eat it, for squeezing. And now it's got juice. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? You're allowed to drink it or not? Does anybody remember what Rabbi Yehuda said? He says, not allowed to drink it. You're not allowed to drink it. Why? Because we're scared you'll do it again. But over here we saw that when you came to olives and grapes, where you didn't show a desire for them to be squeezed, afa became, they're not considered a desirable drink. So how can you say that by pomegranates it is considered a desirable drink? What? Yes, and therefore it says kavachima. Even grapes and olives, which you normally do squeeze. But if you've got no intention to squeeze them, it's not considered levotzen, kavachima pomegranates. So what says loi? Levotzen is bistoma. Shaloi levotzen degali adate. When we say levotzen, it means you said nothing. Shaloi levotzen is when you said, I don't want it. I don't want this juice. The omale nichali, and that Rashi explains is even worse than when pomegranates. That means olives and grapes, when you said, I don't want them to be squeezed, is considered less squeezable and less juice-friendly than pomegranates where you said nothing about them. Because since you said I don't want them to be squeezed, so therefore it's considered not a juice at all, and therefore when they come out, it's considered shlei levotzen, and it's not machshir lekabel tumah. Vibo is saying another answer. We're talking about baskets. Baskets are things that have a lot of holes inside it. That's what a basket is. Now, when a person owns olives and grapes, and he sees them in a basket, what is he thinking to himself? The last thing in the world that I want is that they should be squeezed. Because if they do get squeezed, I'll end up with nothing. Because I'll end up with smaller grapes and the juice will spill out. So therefore, you're not planning to squeeze in the basket. Maybe later he wants, but at the moment, he doesn't want them to be squeezed. So let's just summarize. Rabbi Yehuda holds pomegranates, if you have no intention, and out comes juice, you're not allowed to drink the juice. Grapes and olives, always you're not allowed to drink the juice, even if you intend to eat them. Oh, we have a Mishnah that tells us that olives and grapes in baskets, where you don't want them, the halacha is, you don't want the juice, they're not machshir kabbalah tumah. Why not? Either you were talking about a situation when you said explicitly, I don't want the juice, and therefore that's even worse than stomach, or you said, I don't want the juice. Or we're talking about a situation where it's in a basket, and therefore obviously it's clear that you don't want the juice, because you know that any juice that comes out, you'll end up losing out. Says the Gemara. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda agrees to Rabbi Yehuda the Chachamim by Zeis V'Anavim that what? That the juice is forbidden. Why is it forbidden? Because they're commonly used for juicing. Where do we see the Chachamim agree with Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to all other food? The Tanya. Seichatin, top of Kufmem Daled Amud Beis. Top of Daled Amud Beis. The Mishnah there is not talking about juice that came out, just point out. The Bryce is talking about actually going on Shabbos and squeezing. The Tanya Seichatin bepegoin. What are pegoin? So pegoin are plums. Now if you look at Rashi, Rashi says prunes balaz. Prunes are dried plums. It's interesting. I just get pleasure when Rashi says the French word similar to it. Again, you're allowed to go and squeeze plums. If you go home on Shabbos, this Shabbos afternoon, I'm not sure what Shabbos says nowadays might be forbidden because people do juice plums. But let's say nobody in the world would juice plums. You're allowed to go home and actually juice them. Or the prishin or quinces. You look at Rashi. Quince. Look at Rashi. Rashi says quince. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says prishin or quince. Or be'uzvedin. I looked in the article for this. It's sorb apples. If you know what sorb apples are, Matevim Anoim. You're not allowed to squeeze pomegranates. The Brisa brings a support that you're not allowed to squeeze pomegranates because the Brisa says there was a certain family that used to squeeze pomegranates. How do you know that the Chachamim there say you're allowed to? Is Chachamim? Maybe it's Rabbi Yehuda that's more meikol. If you remember, Rabbi Yehuda said that food which is not made for squeezing, you're allowed to drink the juice. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda is more meikol. Since Rabbi Yehuda is more meikol, so Efsha, this price says only going to Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, a beautiful word. But to have a nami Rabbi Yehuda, let it even be Rabbi Yehuda. Even the Shema said Rabbi Yehuda Yotzim Ma'atzmon. Rabbi Yehuda only permitted when it came out on its own. Did Rabbi Yehuda ever say you're actually allowed to go and squeeze? Since they're not made for squeezing, I feel like even allowed to go and squeeze them. I feel meaning like this. We had a shaila regarding juice that came out. But Yehuda is more makeup. Yehuda says that if you originally intended to eat the fruit, you're allowed to drink the juice. The Chachamim say, no, you're not. Now we have a Brisa that says you're allowed to actually go, not just to drink the juice, you're allowed to go and squeeze the fruit. You're allowed to squeeze plums, you're allowed to squeeze quinces, you're allowed to squeeze sorb apples, wherever they are. Says the Gemara, wait a second, but that could be Rabbi Yehuda, where do you have a Vayda that the Chachamim are also makeup? Says the Gemara, but this Brisa is going much further. This Brisa allows you to go and squeeze it. How can you be allowed to squeeze it? Rabbi Yehuda only allowed you to drink the juice. The answer is, since they're not really made for squeezing, so therefore it's not considered dosh v'chab, because it's not taking a liquid out of a food. It's just separating food from food. So therefore, if according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're allowed to go and squeeze the chatchila, certainly according to the Chachamim, you're allowed to drink the juice because there cannot be a reason to forbid it. So that is the end, well, almost the end of this particular aspect. So just summarize what we've learned. According to this, comes out, grapes and olives, everybody agrees, you're not allowed to squeeze, it's osman atayah, and even if you tend to eat them, if juice comes out, you're not allowed to drink the juice. Why? Because you might come to squeeze it, even though you actually bought them to eat. Since they're so commonly used for squeezing, we're scared that you'll change your mind and decide to squeeze more. When it comes to prunes, no, because there's the juice that already came out. Here we're scared that later you'll put it in a bowl. The Gabi Machshin will talk about past juice. Here we're choishes for future juice. Regarding prunes and quinces and these kinds of fruit, you're allowed to actually go and squeeze. Regarding pomegranates, it depends. According to the Chachamim, all juice is forbidden. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it depends why you bought the pomegranate. So we passed in like Rabbi Yehuda, it depends why you bought the juice. Says the Gemara. Shabbos Menashe, in the Brisa wanted to support itself by saying they're not allowed to squeeze pomegranates. Why? Because in the family of Beis Menashe, they used to squeeze pomegranates. Says Gemara, Shabbos Menashe, Menachem, Yisech to B'Monim, Omar Menachem, Aloha Kagav Shabbos Menashe, Menachem. We passed like that. Is he a Tana? It's a family that used to have a certain anhoga. They used to have a certain behavior. They used to squeeze pomegranates. So we paskin like a family. What does that mean? If you meant to say we pass like the Tana because he's got Menashe and Menachem's family as a support, or we shouldn't start with Menachem, just because he holds like him, just because we see one family doing that, that makes the halacha Menashe and Menachem have a ruba dama. This one family is the majority of the world? Of course not. Just because that one family wants it, that's not a reason that everybody else should be forbidden. Says, and yes, there is such a concept that one family can change the world. It's that. The halacha is that if you grow vegetables in a vineyard, it is kilayim. But if you grow thorns in a vineyard, it's not kilayim. Why is it not kilayim? Because it has to be a fruit. It has to be a fruit. Now, there's a certain kind of thorn which people used to cultivate for the sake of their camels. Camels used to eat them. So Mishnah says, if you, that was hops. And the reason is because he held that hops was a tree, not a vegetable. Had he held that it was a vegetable, he would have agreed that it's forbidden. Because he held it was a tree. Yeah. And the Kaim creates a big kerem of Leza in Kiddush. It says it's kilayim. Come and say that's not kilayim. Nobody ever grows these things. In the Arab countries, because they keep thorns for the camels. So you see, Rabbi Lezer held that it's kilayim. Why? Because it's a proper crop. Because they used to grow it for the camels. So similarly over here, we see that the family of Menashe, they would squeeze pomegranates. It's a raya that squeezing pomegranates is a common behavior, and therefore it's forbidden. Says the Gemara. Oh, similar to the Gemara's question. Mid the area, can you compare? Dalvia, Asra, that was a whole town. Here we say that his decision is cancelled. That means you can't compare the whole country, the whole area, to a single family. The fact is, let's say we would have a fruit, which indeed the Shabbos says there's hardly any fruit which is not squeezed. But let's say we would say nobody in the world squeezes plums. And one family comes along and they start squeezing plums. You can't compare that and say, well, now we should be forbidden to squeeze plums on Shabbos. They're the only ones that do it. It's not like the Arabs where they would grow this crop for the sake of the camels, at least it was a country. But here it's just one family. The reason is like Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda. Trodden beach the sochta v'nosam b'mikveh poistis hamikveh v'shinumah. What happens is there were beets that you squeeze them and you put them into the mikveh, and now the mikveh has come discolored. It becomes reddish color because of the beets. Now the halacha is that you only passel a mikveh pashtus if it's a liquid, right? We'll see the Mikveh argues with this, but this stage is more understood. If you put something, which I say, you put in something which is not a liquid into mikveh change color, it doesn't matter. The end of the day, beets are not squeezed. This is another thing. Beets are something which nobody squeezes. So therefore, how can they be passed the mikveh? And since you've decided to make it into liquid avlu mashka, since you made it into a decision to squeeze it, it becomes a liquid. So here Rashi explains the whole cheshbon as follows. That like this. That when you squeeze pomegranates, what happens is like this. I'll try to explain it better. The older days, there were two reasons why you squeeze the fruit. One reason you squeeze the fruit is because that way the fruit would become sweeter. They would enjoy the fruit better after it had been squashed a few times. Now that is mutter on Shabbos, because there's no problem of dosh. There was another reason they would squeeze fruit, and that is to get out the juice, and that's forbidden on Shabbos. Oh, that's a good example. Very good. That's like the first case, when you squeeze the gate just to make it sweeter. Oh, you're not trying to extract something, you're just trying to make it sweeter. What? Or softer. Says the Gemara like this, that you're not allowed to squeeze fruit to take out the juice. You're allowed to squeeze plums because you're not trying to take out the juice, you just try to make them sweeter. But since we see that this family would squeeze out the juice in order to actually drink it, we don't allow you to squeeze pomegranates because we're choishish that if you come to squeeze it to make it sweeter, you will then eventually come to squeeze it for the juice. And why are we choishish you'll come to squeeze it for the juice? Because we've seen that there are families that do it. That means like this. Of course, we're not going to change the halacha because of one family. Just because one family squeezes it out, therefore we should forbid to squeeze it out. At the end of the day, this is not something which is made for squeezing. It says, well, no. This family shows that there's an advantage in squeezing out for juice. There are some people that look to get the juice. So if a person wants to squeeze it out for the sake of the sweetening, if we allow everyone to squeeze it out for sweetening, eventually people come to squeeze it out for the juice. Yes, but since lots of people squeeze, only some squeeze for this and some squeeze for that, therefore it's not considered the minority in actual squeezing, it's a minority in why they squeeze. And therefore that is why it's forbidden. Says, well, Papa Omar, we should have the reason why beets are forbid make a mikveh pasuk is because it's not something you make a mikveh out. It's supposed a mikveh b'shinoi. Oh. So, according to the Papa, if something spoils the mikveh, even if it's not a liquid, let's just see Rashi inside. It's the last Rashi of the thin column. But Papa, the reason of beets, it's not because you made them into a liquid. Anything which is not water, snow, or ice. There was a story in the days of the Maharsha that there was a leak in the mikveh. So somebody blocked it up and he used a certain kind of cement. And then what happened was, afterwards they put the water in and the cement went and made the mikveh discolored. Instead of being clear water, it became a different color altogether. And the question is the mikveh kosher or not? What would you say?
Do not say that they had this green mikvahs in the wall.
What would you say based on this Gemara? So if you hold like Rav Chisda that says the reason why beets are no good is because it's a liquid, so this is not a liquid and therefore it's okay. If you hold like Rav Papa that says anything which you can't make a mikveh out of, so then it spoils the mikveh, so this would also spoil the mikveh. Here we have a very similar kind of Gemara. Let's just do the Gemara, a few more lines will stop. The Rashi explains in the olden days when they make olives, there were 3 stages to the olives. You would take them and put them into... This would be machlokas. It would be no good in the mice. We pass that before.
The mikvahs that are green.
Because of green are not good. If it's made out of something which is possible for mikvah, you can't use it.
Cut the waters in there and they poured it down.
It depends if it's mashma. It's posted as a mikvah shinimah. That's what the Gemara says of it. It passes as a mikvah shinimah. Yes. It's very quickly like this. That when you have olives in a bowl, there are 3 stages of liquid of coming out. That means there's 2 parts to olive. There's the olive oil, which everybody wants as a proper juice, and there's oil sweat, which is a liquidy white liquid that comes off the oil. And it would come at 3 stages. It would come when you'd first pluck the olives, put them in a bowl, out would come like a watery liquid. Then later, as you'd pile more and more olives into the bowl, the weight would squeeze it down and out would come a liquid. And finally, after the squeezing, another liquid would come out. Now the question is, Tanos, not for Lisich, into mikveh fell wine, or chemitz of vinegar, moichel, this is olive juice. V'shino ma'av posel. Man, Tana de moichel mashke, Oma Abaya Rek Yaakov, the Tanya of Yaakov, moichel au kemashke. That olive juice is like a liquid. So why is it toy if it's a liquid? Nobody wants it. Nobody wants the juice to come out. It's not a liquid. Why is the liquid that comes after it's been pressed? Why is it metame? The last stage of the liquid has a little bit of olive oil inside it. It's like this. One mandama holds oil juice, not olive oil. But olive juice is not a liquid. Since it's not a liquid, it's not mekabel tumah. Oh, why do we say that olive juice that comes on the end is mekabel tumah? The answer is because it's got inside it a bit of olive oil. The other mandama says no, olive oil is a juice. If it's a juice, it's always mekabel tumah. Olive liquid is always a juice. Oh, so why is it mekabel tumah in the beginning? Because that's part that you never wanted. Says the Gemara, "My benayu." What's the nafkimina? What? That's it. So it says, "My benayu." What's the nafkimina? In either way, the first stage it is not mekabel tumah. The last stage it is mekabel tumah. They came at a later stage. That means it came because of the squeezing, not because of the squeezing of the wine of the press. And not right at the beginning. It came because of the squashingness of all the olives on top of each other. The pressure creates a liquid. According to the first man, a person's okay with it, therefore it's mekabel tumah. But the second man, it's not mekabel tumah because at the end of the day, it's not oil. Since it's something you don't make a mikveh out of, you're not allowed to make a mikveh out of olive juice, and therefore it places a mikveh b'shinuma, not because it's a liquid, not like a buyer. I explained this for Shittus of Yaakov that says it's a liquid. Even without Rabbi Yaakov, it says it's a liquid. Nevertheless, since it's something you don't make a mikveh out of, so therefore it passes the mikveh. We will stop here because next Gemara goes on a bit, and therefore it starts. Shouldn't stop in the middle. They're going to look at Tzlachah. Have any questions? Is next week Mincha probably 7:25? No. So next week the Shiur will be a few minutes earlier as well. Yeah. Then afterwards, then the summer. Which day? Let's look at. We've got. For 11 daf left, I think. 11 and a half daf left. So the 11 days from today is Yud Aleph Av. 11 and a half. Probably it's got Tisha B'Av.
1.5 a day.
Probably it's got Tisha B'Av, which means...
I don't mind to do Shiur on Tisha B'Av.
Not allowed to learn more.
No, in the afternoon.
Maybe Sunday. Maybe Sunday.
What else are you going to do?
Sunday night after Tisha B'Av.
I know, because I'm going away on Sunday morning, I think.
What's happening now then?
Doing the Zoom with and uploading the Shiur.
Why would we not do live?
Or do live as well. Do live as well.
You'll see him by Amazon Prime.
No. We do one.
So we pass can like
we're not
a proper to all about it.
You want to try to finish on the Shabbos. The Shabbos after Tisha B'Av. We can if we do a Shiur this Friday as well, and we go a little bit faster.
Then we have to have a sim on Tisha B'Av. How many daf have we got there?
No, Shabbos after Tisha B'Av. Shabbos Shalosh Shudas this week. I mean, not this week, next week.
So there's got to be some serious.
Wait a second. Yehuda, wait a second. Let me just finish this off. Yehuda, do you mind putting it on the group, explaining that there will be Shiur on Friday, both Fridays. That means the Friday, there'll be a Shiur both Fridays.
Where? This Friday and next Friday.
And next Friday.
Next Shabbos.
In order to finish, I'll make a Shiur Shudas, and ask people if they're okay with it, if they're okay. And it means, like, let's say, going maybe a little bit extra every day, like to do. Right.
What's the matter?